Hey everyone, welcome back. And for the new listeners, I hope you enjoy. And with that said, sit back and relax. I'm not sure why this happens to me, but I've encountered several creeps at Barnes and Nobles, and even got one banned. Last year I was at Barnes and Nobles studying when I noticed this older man staring at me. He would fake read his magazine and look up at me every 10 seconds or so. It got so bad that I took out my phone and faked a phone call while I recorded him because he just wouldn't stop. He would bounce his leg and move around in his seat, but I wasn't 100% sure I should make a complaint, so I didn't. Today I see him again, and I immediately recognized him. I stare at him, and he purposely sits with his back towards me and is facing a younger girl, maybe in college. I couldn't tell. I continue to do my work and I make sure to watch him, and lo and behold, he constantly looks up at her, and I literally watched him move around in his seat and readjust his pants several times. I knew she wasn't noticing because she was very focused on her work and had headphones in. His legs were spread and he was actually facing her. I keep staring at her, trying to get her attention, but she would just glance over and give me a quick smile. Finally, after I was sure he was doing something to himself in his chair, I got up and approached her. I wrote on a piece of paper, "Is he being creepy?" She said that she wasn't really paying attention, and I told her what he was doing, and that I'd seen him before. The second I got up to talk to her, he bolted out of the store. That's how I knew he was guilty, because at first I had doubts. She thanked me for letting her know. I complained to the store and they told me they got a lot of creeps and had just gotten a complaint about another man. Luckily, I still had that video and showed them what he looked like. This has happened to me several times in Barnes and Nobles. Stay aware, creeps love going there. I live in a quiet residential area in the East End, and it's mostly older brick houses with a few apartment buildings. I run every morning, mostly, and the route I settled on was about a 4-mile road trip. The first half went through the neighborhood streets, past the elementary school, and the church on the next street over. The second half followed the river trail, started at a small parking area, and wound along the bank of the river for about a mile and a half before looping back. The river wasn't much, it was just a shallow channel, maybe 20 feet across. Other than that, there were rocky banks and some overhanging trees. In spring, the current picked up, but in the summer, it slowed to almost nothing. I liked the trail because it was usually empty early in the morning. There were a few dog walkers, sometimes and occasionally another runner. There were benches every quarter mile, so it was a good spot for a run. I'm a woman in my mid-30s. I'm average build and I'm 5'6". I kept my hair in a ponytail when I ran, and I always wore earbuds. But I kept the volume low, a habit I developed from listening to too many scary stories. One morning I was on the trail and I noticed a man who I'd never seen before. He was sitting on the bench at the trail entrance, the one closest to the parking area. He was wearing a dark gray jacket and jeans. He wasn't using his phone or even reading. He was just sitting there with his forearms on his knees. I ran past him and did my trail loop, then came back and he was gone by then. However, he was there the next morning, and he was sitting on the same bench with the same posture. This time, he was wearing a baseball hat pulled low. It wasn't until the third or fourth morning in a row that I started to feel uneasy. He was always there when I arrived, and always gone when I came back. He never wore running gear, and he didn't nod or acknowledge me in any way. He just watched me go past. I mentioned it to my coworker Bernice over lunch that week, She said I was probably being too paranoid, and I really thought she was right at the time. By the end of the first week, I noticed that he drove a silver SUV, but I couldn't see the plates clearly from where I entered the trail. He always arrived before I did, which meant he was there before 6:15 a.m. the following Monday. He was there again, and this time he stood up when I passed. I wasn't sure at the time, but when I was a few feet away from him, I thought he tried to grab me. However, I convinced myself I was just being paranoid. I ran the whole loop faster than usual and kept my hand near my phone. I went straight home without cooling down. Then on Tuesday, I almost didn't go. But then I told myself I was being ridiculous and went anyway. It was foggy that morning, which was unusual for October, and the sky was still gray when I reached the trail entrance. His SUV was in the lot as usual, and I was about halfway through the loop when I reached a bend near an old willow tree where the trail curved close to the water. The bank dropped off sharply there, maybe 3 feet down to the river's edge. I slowed slightly because the ground was wet and I was watching my footing. Then I turned around and saw the man coming up fast behind me. I didn't have time to react, and he hit me hard. Then we both went off the bank and into the shallow water. The cold knocked the breath out of me, and he was much heavier than I was. He got his forearm across my upper back and pushed my face towards the water. I got one breath in, and then my face was under. The water was maybe 8 inches in deep, but that was more than enough. I couldn't get my arms under me because his weight was on my back. The water was shockingly cold, maybe 50 degrees. I thought for a moment that I was going to drown in 8 inches of water. I stopped trying to push up and went still instead. He shifted slightly when I stopped, struggling, and I twisted hard to the right and got my left arm free. I swung my elbow back and connected with something. I think it was his ribs. He grunted but didn't let go. Then I managed to roll onto my side, and I kicked him as hard as I could in the stomach. He went backwards into the water, and I was up and running before he was on his feet. I screamed as soon as I hit the trail, and I kept going as I ran towards the road. I was soaking wet, and one of my shoes was gone, but I didn't stop. I came out of the trail entrance onto the road and ran straight into the middle. A woman driving a white van pulled over immediately and unlocked the doors. I got in and she drove away from the trail entrance after I told her what happened. Police arrived at the trail within 10 minutes. They found my shoe on the riverbank and some blood on a rock. However, they didn't find him that morning, and his SUV was gone from the lot. For 8 long weeks, nothing happened, and I didn't run at all. But then there was another attack in my area. The victim was a grad student at a university, and she ran before her morning classes. A man matching my description grabbed her arm from behind and tried to drag her off the path. She hit him with her water bottle and ran to the street. Then he fled. She was smart enough to get the plate number from his vehicle. Thanks to her, he was finally caught. I went back to the trail the following spring. The first morning I went back, it was hard, especially when I passed the spot. However, it got easier every time, and now I can handle it without thinking about that day too much. My name's Claire, and I live on a quiet street in Raleigh, North Carolina, in a house that I've owned for 24 years. I'm 57 years old, and I live with my dog, Porter. I have a son, but he's 25 and he has his own place. A few years ago, I was selling a lot of stuff online to make room in the house. I was using Craigslist mostly, but also Facebook. We had an old couch in the basement that I really wanted to get rid of. It was in good shape, but we really didn't need it. so I put it up for $50. A guy named Marty responded on Craigslist after a few days and said he could come get it the next day. I had my son help get it up on the garage, so it would be ready for him. Marty arrived right on time, and he drove a dark green pickup truck. It was older, and he had an open trailer hooked to it. He parked right in front of my house. Then he knocked on the door, and I let him in. He was about 45, and he wore a plain blue t-shirt and old running shoes. He didn't talk much, and he didn't try to make conversation. He looked at the couch and counted out the cash, then handed the bills to me. I helped him carry the cushions out first. Then we moved the two main sections of it through the front door. He didn't need much help because he was strong, so we loaded everything onto the trailer in about 15 minutes. He thanked me, shook my hand once, and then drove away. I went back inside and looked at the empty corner of the basement living room. It looked bigger than I expected, and I was glad to be making space. Then I got home late from work at around 8 and noticed a dark green truck parked at the far end of my street, but I didn't worry about it at the time. I went inside and made dinner, but when I let my dog out in the backyard at around 10, I looked through the side gate out of habit, and the truck was still there. Still, I thought it was probably a neighbor's visitor. Lots of people on my street had older relatives who drove trucks like that, so I went to bed without worrying about it. The next evening on Wednesday, I drove home from work and noticed the same truck parked on the same block. The angle was different. It was closer to the intersection now, but I recognized the small dent on the trailer hitch and the particular shade of green paint. I sat in my driveway for a moment after I turned off the engine. I didn't call anyone that night because I didn't have enough to say. Thursday and Friday passed without incident, and I didn't see the truck. But then the next Saturday, I came around the front corner of the house, pulling the garbage bin, and the green truck was there again, and this time it was closer to my house. Not only that, but I saw someone standing next to it, and it was Marty. He was on the sidewalk about 30 feet away, between two parked cars. He was just standing there, looking directly at my house. When I came around the corner, he saw me, and we made eye contact. Then he started walking towards me. He didn't jog or run at first, just walked fast with his head down. I stood there holding the trash can by the handle and watched him come towards me. Then he reached into his jacket pocket with his right hand and pulled out a pocket knife. I dropped the trash can. It hit the driveway and the lid came off and rolled. I turned and ran back towards my front door. I hadn't locked it when I came out because I thought I'd be outside for 30 seconds. I got to the door, shoved it open, and threw it shut behind me. I turned the lock as fast as I could. Then he hit the door around 2 seconds after I locked it. He pushed it hard once, and then tried to turn the handle. Then he threw his shoulder into it. The door moved in the frame, but didn't open. My dog Porter was barking somewhere behind me in the kitchen. I backed away from the door and grabbed my phone off the table. I called 911, but they said it would be 10 minutes until they got there. I didn't go near the front window. I stayed in the hallway with Porter. Then I screamed out that the cops were coming, and just then he stopped and seemed like he left. Eventually, the dispatcher told me the officers located the truck, and they were making a stop a few blocks away. The cops later told me that during questioning, Marty admitted that he'd been watching my house ever since we first met. He'd seen what he described as a nice house, and assumed there was more worth taking. I guess he thought a single woman and a dog was an easy target. I still sell things online occasionally, but I meet people in public parking lots whenever possible. And if something has to be picked up from my house, I have a friend come over. I really hope you all enjoyed those stories, and thanks so much for listening. If you have your own stories you want to share, my link is down below in the description, and I would love to read them on the channel. With that said, please leave a like, comment, or subscribe, and as always, stay